Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast.
On the show today, we have Jon Mowat. He's the managing director of Hurricane, a video-first agency, and author of Video Marketing. We get into the nuts and bolts on how video can help you drive sales and build your brand. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast, a place for business leaders to get the best and most credible information on marketing, strategy, and innovation. Your hosts, Mark Binkley and Vasilis Douros, share their experiences as they gather insights from the world's leading experts. Now, on with the show.
Today we have a great show lined up for you. We're going to be talking about the most powerful tool in the advertising toolbox. And you didn't even know it. It's video. To help us dive into this topic, we've invited Jon Mowat, author of Video Marketing, who is now, and I believe in its second edition. Is that right, Jon?
It is, yeah, it is.
Awesome. Jon, welcome to the show. We're really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. It's great. Thank you.
I have to say, the book is phenomenal. Mark and I we were comparing notes initially, but I'm not sure if you've actually realized this, but you've created this amazing resource for advertisers and practitioners alike. You literally cover everything from video strategy, how to create great videos, even going into the details of the equipment that you need. What an amazing resource.
Well, thank you very much. That explains why it took me so long to write it, I think.
Now, for many of you that may not know who Jon is, he's one of the world's leading experts in video marketing, having created campaigns for global brands, international charities, and even UN organizations as well. He's also directed award-winning TV documentaries, including The Gulf War, if I'm not mistaken, for the BBC. Now, off the bat, we have to ask, do you have any good stories from shooting those documentaries?
I mean, I was very lucky. I spent my 20s traveling the world, going to all sorts of countries. But there was, if you want one story, this is one of my favorite stories. The UK and US forces went into Basra during the invasion or liberation of Kuwait as Iraq, as we go in there. Basically, I was the first cameraman into Saddam's palace in Basra. So I went in with sort of the frontline troops. I'd like to say with them, I was 20 foot behind them, hiding behind a wall. But, I went in there. And then about a day later, when the fighting had died down, I realized that sort of mementos were being taken from this palace, which I suppose you're not technically meant to do. But, the Marines were like, look, get your Leatherman out, get your little screwdriver out, take a memento. And that is why in my kitchen I have Saddam Hussein's towel rail, which is propping up my tea towels.
That's got to be amazing.
I'm not quite sure if it's legal, but it's a good memento.
But what a
good story. I've got loads of them as well.
That's amazing. I got nothing like that.
Sorry, loads of towel racks or loads of great stories.
I got a towel rack from everywhere I've ever invaded. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, let's get right into it. We're genuinely really excited about this topic. I think, when we're looking at video content creation and whatnot, it is becoming somewhat more utilized more than ever before. I don't want to say it's become easier. I still believe it's one of the most difficult things to do the right way. But, we made a bold statement just up off the front there saying that video is the most powerful tool advertisers have ever had. Now, how about we spend some time with that? What makes video so unique for you, Jon?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a bold statement, isn't it? Because you're kind of saying, well, it's bigger than TV advertising and it's bigger than, but I think actually it's the most powerful thing we've ever had to find specific people and to change their behavior. So yes, okay, if you've got millions and millions of dollars, you can run a TV campaign and it will have an impact. But in terms of like bang for your buck, we have a specific kind of person and we want to target them with a bit of content, which is going to do a number of things, emotionally engage them, get them to change their mind and get them to change their behavior and allow us to measure it and enable us to retarget them. It's like, yeah, it's that. That's why it's so good.
Go ahead, Mark.
The content part, it's interesting because oftentimes you think about the channel as the targeting tool, but in a lot of ways the content could be the targeting tool.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially true with video because you've got more opportunities to I always think about finding the mutants, like from the X-Men. They're out there. You just got to find them. And so like the way you tell the stories can help you also find people and target the right people.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to be doing a deep dive today, so these are the things we're definitely looking forward to getting into. But that you're absolutely right. That ability to tell a specific, engaging story to specific types of people is something we've never seen before in this scale, definitely. But I'm all for it because I've written a book on it. So what do you expect? But I genuinely do believe it is that powerful.
It's funny because the media landscape has evolved quite considerably. If you think about it in the context of, the actual medium itself. So, every brand has now become a publisher as well as an advertiser, and you have this opportunity to do so. Is that the reason why you believe video is so powerful, or does it even go deeper than that?
Well, I think video works across that. We're going to start talking sales funnel, guys. We're 10 minutes in. It's starting to think about it.
Already started.
If you're looking at that, contemporary sales funnel rather than the sort of traditional sort of upside down pyramid shape, but it's narrow at the top where you're putting leads in. That's your awareness consideration phase, where big fat people are hanging around in there for months, if not years, and then we've got to sort of drive them to do action. So video works as an awareness tool at the top, whether that's being like for search or like brand campaigns. It works in the middle of the funnel when you're trying to do like explain what you're trying to do or sort of show behind the scenes. And then it's also really good at like telling people right at the bottom of the funnel, look, you got 20% off, you got 10% off, do it now, or FOMO drivers, or finding out whatever is that last obstacle to purchase. So it's interesting because it's the first time we've ever used a particular medium through all of those things and talked about the medium itself rather than maybe the tactic or the strategy or the it's a tool, but you can use it at any point in the process. You're not going to run a radio documentary at the top of the funnel, but you could run a video ad there. So I think it just gives you a lot of things. And I think if we just look at the scale of it as well, there's 1 million minutes of video across the internet every second, and that means that in 1 minute, there's 347 million YouTube videos being watched and 167 million TikTok. I mean, the scale of this thing, but also that's the downside as well, right? How do you make a noise amongst all this thing? But that's the point of today is to help people understand how to do that.
And it's interesting too that you mentioned like, all the different channels and platforms, because it's not like it used to be just a TV thing. And when I mean TV, I mean like brought to you by a cable provider.
Right.
I mean, it's maybe a little bit different. BBC probably in the UK, but in Canada, there's Rogers, there's Shaw, and there's like just different channel providers that give you the pipes to get the content on your television set.
Yes.
That were traditional broadcasters. And it's different now. And it's not just about mobile access through digital channels anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean, what is really interesting, I think, is as you were just touching on there, like it used to be you had content and then which people wanted to watch, right? And then in the middle of that, you would stick things they don't want to watch. It's been sort of described as a sort of an unpleasant floating object in the swimming pool. It's like you swim into it, you don't want it. It's like it's in the way. There's a less delicate word for what it is floating in the pool, which people have used. But this idea that you used to watch a stream of content, then an ad would come in. And it's completely changed now. Suddenly we're making content that is the pool. It's people want to go and swim in it because it's exciting. If you just look at what's, for example, being changed by TikTok, not only are brands having to make content that people want to watch because they're not really interested in adverts, TikTok is demanding what that content looks like and the tone of it and how it's put across and the format, because the platform is dictating the content, not the advertiser saying, I've got a 30-second spot, I'm going to do what I want. It's a changing world.
Yeah, that's funny. And you talked about this just a little bit earlier, and maybe it was Mark. But when we look at video, we said that it used to be something that it came just through your TV. The reality is, because there's so many new ways to do this and get video out in front of people. You talked about YouTube. TikToks, just 1 million views that we're seeing. There are 167 million TikToks. Like, what is going on there? I still don't understand the platform. And I think we're going to touch on it a little bit later.
Yeah,
but
showing
it's
your age.
Something just I am showing my age, but it blows my mind in terms of how fast that grew. But it is unique when you think about video and its ability to touch on those multiple points in the consumer decision journey, or call it the funnel, whatnot. The awareness and consideration. You're seeing more and more videos come out with the sale now, the hook at the end. So either you've been remarketed or retargeted based on something, and that's like, hey, here's your 30% off or whatever the case. There's not a lot of channels that can speak to each of those points in the same way. So what is then the key to be super effective in that space? How do you use video across those touch points? Is there one touch point that's better than the other? In your opinion, where would someone start potentially? This
is where we launch off into the big questions, right? I love this stuff. So I think it's really easy to talk about video, right? Video is what is that? It's a piece of moving film. It's a sort of animation. It's like stuff moving on screen. What we're talking about here is a discipline called video marketing, which is, it's not just a video, right? Video marketing it's about data-driven insights, creating video content across multiple channels with multiple audiences. And it's about thinking about how to use the sales funnel and using video across that sales funnel to create solutions to problems and to drive brand growth. So it's not just like, here's a film. Video marketing is a whole new discipline of like, right, I need to get people in the awareness phase. I need to do 15-second ads. Everyone knows who I am, but they don't buy anything. Right, I'm going to do a 5-minute explainer that shows our passion and our values. It's video marketing is around using all those normal marketing tools that you have, identifying all the problems, but applying moving image to solve the problem, because we know that moving image is probably going to solve the problem better than a print ad or any other type of campaign. So it's like, I'm afraid it's a whole new thing that people have got to get their head around, and it probably. The exciting thing for me is that it used to be, in a company, you'd have the marketing person, and then they were joined on the board table by maybe the SEO person, or, they would, and then, but now, like the video person, the video content is on that board table for a number of reasons. One, it's really effective, but two, it does suck up a lot of budget. And suddenly the board are going, hang on a minute, this is $1 million campaign going out here.
Yeah.
We need to bring you in. So suddenly it's not just a method, it's a whole mindset and technique. And that's where the book comes in. And it's about, how do you embrace that?
I feel like V and I used to work together, and we had this thing called social flyer. And the idea at the time was, we're replacing print flyer with social media posts. It was just a single image ad. But you take this idea of an old medium, let's call it, and then or tactic like print and a flyer concept, and then you put it in a digital space. And I feel like we're kind of at that infancy stage still with video, where it used to be either infomercials at late at night or a brand piece that was really highly emotive. Because of the platform of mostly just the pipes being delivery pipes being TV sets. Now you've got all kinds of different ways to deliver the medium on digital channels, and I feel like it's evolving what that means for video, because it's no longer just a binary infomercial or brand piece. It can be both, and a whole bunch of combinations thereof. That we haven't even talked about.
I mean, I think the idea that the video is just a TV commercial on a different social channel is, that's blown out of the water right now. So yes, you do still have those 30-second spots, but you're much more likely to have something much more niche where you're targeting specific problems. I mean, some of the best successes we've had is making content to answer questions that are Googled. Like, we did a big thing about how to get rid of fleas for good. We're working with a company that makes pet food, sort of medicines and stuff, pet medicines. And we knew that a big search term was, how do I get rid of fleas for good? Because they keep coming back. Made a film called that. They've had, 250,000 organic views because they're just answering the question. And those organic views are on their website. And at the end of it says, buy the product. Right. So it's like, that's a 30-second TV spots. Never used to think like that, right? It's just a completely new way of answering consumer questions when they have them.
Yeah, and you're not restricted to time if it's on somebody's website.
No, I mean, the number one thing I'm asked all the time is, how long should a video be? Which is just like, it is the classic piece of string thing, but it's at different parts of the funnel. Yeah, it is. And literally, if I'm asked that in a conference, my eyes roll because it's like, well, somewhere between
Great
3 seconds.
question.
Yeah. The two questions I'm asked most are, how long should a video be? And how do I do it with no money? Those are the two sort of the two things. And, I mean, it's a difficult answer for both of those questions, really. But you can do it. But yes, duration is vital. I mean, on TikTok at the moment, it's really interesting. If you make a video from 7 to 11 seconds, or from sort of 14 to 21, it'll do well. But for some reason, 11, 12, 13 seconds are just like a graveyard and just don't perform well. And it's like, that's mental. So we used to talk about absolute duration. And now it's like windows of duration. And it depends on where you are in the sales funnel. Top of the sales funnel is typically much shorter. And bottom of the sales funnel is, 2-hour webinars,
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting. Because the context of the where the video is placed matters more for the length than the just absolute length of a video.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about we talk about where people are watching, and where people are watching isn't actually just the platform they're on; it's physically where they are. So if you imagine you get up in the morning, you're running out, you're jumping on the bus or jumping in a taxi. You've maybe your brain has got some time to flick through some Instagram stories or some TikToks, but short, punchy, we exist messages. When you get to work and you're sat at your desk, you're going to Google, business related problems. But then when you get home, suddenly your phone switches from being vertical to typically landscape. So it moves to a fixed format, and our attention moves to long form content on YouTube and Netflix. So it's like, which platform, where in the day, physically, where are they? All these nuances make a massive difference to performance.
It's interesting because I, like with the Ukraine war and all that kind of stuff going on, I've been watching clips from news shows at night in bed, horizontal, but sound off because I don't want to wake up my wife. And I will only pick the videos with the closed captioning on it.
If you're looking for a way to stress yourself in life, going to sleep watching videos of the Ukraine war would be, it's like,
right
I can't think of way worse to go to sleep. But yeah, I mean, we're all doing it, right? We're all doing it. I mean, I saw a good funny thing the other day. It was like, I don't watch TikToks. I watch Instagram story screen grabs of TikToks that were popular 2 weeks ago because I'm old. It's like, it's just, we're all, just slightly behind the curve. TikTok and Instagram and YouTube at the moment appear to me to be mostly full of screen grabs of TikTok from 2 weeks ago. And it's almost like this channel is so big, it's also providing the most of the content for these other channels. So that's why they're so worried.
I was reading somewhere, and I could be mistaken, where Instagram is getting worried about the new behavior that's being shown on their platforms, where it's moving more to the short form video, if you will, through like the reels versus the feed. So people are spending more time in reels, less time on feed, which is making the advertising platform aspect of it a lot more difficult because people aren't spending time in feed, and that's where a lot of their, I guess, if you will, their engine was based from a targeting perspective when it came to, ads, not as much on the reel side right now. But it is interesting that it has been inundated with all of the, the TikTok reels. They're just being, because you can still see that little thumbnail there on the bottom right. It's like,
I mean, TikTok is 1.1 billion at the moment. Instagram is about 1.2 users. So Instagram is going to be fourth within months. And, quite rightly, it is worried. Yeah. But, I think TikTok's one of those things that everyone's talking about at the moment, but it is only a slice of the pie, right? It's
Well, it's an interesting point too, because it is a slice of the pie, but I think that's part of what makes videos so complicated, because it used to just be like, we'll build a 30 and it's going to go on TV. Yeah. But now you've got TV, you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got YouTube, and you've got square, you've got vertical, you've got horizontal. Like there's all these different formats, which I think short circuits a lot of people's brains when they're trying to figure out how to build the content and where to put it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not video marketing. I don't think is difficult, but it's complex. I think those are the two. Once you've got the basic principles of, we need to make an emotional connection with someone. We need to understand our target audience. We need to drive behavior. They're those kind of basic principles. But it's mental. So my video marketing planner, it has, it's a big spreadsheet. And if I was starting from scratch with a brand, I have 4 phases vertically, which is awareness, consideration, action, retention. And then into those pillars, I'll have different types of content, whether it be hero, hub, help content. Then you've got how are you going to activate those through paid or social? Then we have all the key, it's like it just exponentially gets wider. And that's why people can freak out, right? But once you start mapping it out, you can use the same assets overall. But we used to deliver one 16:9 film on a DVD. That's how old I am. And now we're delivering typically 22 assets for any one thing, because we've got captions, closed captions, reversions, languages. That's just what it is now. You need to reversion stuff.
So how important is it for your video planner tool? Would you say, how important is that part, pre-planning your video shoot? Because it seems like if you don't do it, you're not taking advantage of the investment. Yeah,
I mean, okay. I'm just wondering where I start my rant now, because it's like, it's like, okay,
step on that soapbox.
Where do I start with the thing? So the 3 key parts of video are planning, production, and activation. So, the production's the obvious one, right? You're just going to make some cool stuff. We can talk about it there, but it starts with planning. So if you don't want to waste your money, you need to start with clear goals. Where in the sales funnel or whatever you call it, have we got a problem? Is it, I have an awareness problem? Is it that people aren't converting? Once you've got those goals, then you can start mapping out how you're going to activate it. How do I reach my audience? And only then do you start making these things. So just rolling it back, I was just going to give some sort of helpful, some sort of vaguely framework of people so they can start planning stuff. Did you hear that very loud car there, by the way? I do apologize for that. Just having a backfire. Okay. So we've talked about one model already, which is like the digital sales funnel, right? You can everyone I think can understand that. But onto that, we need to lay what I call the HHHG model. So this is based on YouTube's Hero Hub hygiene model. But I've also got a go in there. So there's 4 types of content, right? Firstly, hero content. This is Felix Baumgartner jumping out of a spaceship and coming down to Earth on a parachute, right? It's like emotional brand messaging. It's your 30-second TV ad. We all understand that. But then you've got hub content, and the reason it's hub content is people come back to watch it on the time. It's like a series. So this might be a series of interviews on your website, and that answers a completely different problem. Hero is about raising awareness. Hub content is about solving, answering more questions. And then underneath that, we have help content, which does what it says on the tin. It's answering problems. It's finding solutions. It's driving people towards conversion. And then go content is like those short ads, which we put out on Insta or social, or even through your email saying there's money off, or this is what you can do to get over the line. So your plan has to start with, what's my goal, right? Where is the problem in the sales funnel? And which one of these hero, hub, help, go films is going to solve that problem? Because if you've got a conversion problem, spanking all your money on a shiny 30-second brand film is going to do bugger all. It's not going to make any difference. Whereas if you've got this amazing mid-funnel content sat on your website, 3 hours worth of interviews and stuff, but nobody knows who you are, that's a waste of money too. You need to do a 15-second paid ad. So in a long answer to your question, planning is absolutely vital. And alongside that, I'm going to use my analogy of a spork, which is one of these things you eat with. And, it's a rubbish spoon and a rubbish fork. If you set out to make something which is 2 things, it's going to be crap at both of them. Yeah. So, it's about which one of these audiences is the most important, which one of my objectives is more important. I'm going to make the right tool for that job. And if I need a spoon for something else, I'll make a spoon. I can talk. I rant about that argument particularly because you go to these meetings and they're like, oh, and it's got to say this and it's got to say that and it's got to hit this audience, and it's no, it's not going to work.
Yeah, there's some research that I saw not long ago. I can't remember who it was from, but it might be the IPA or L'Espelette, but basically the gist of it is that the more messages you try and cram into a video, the less people remember.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like what you're saying is like, if your goal and objective is to raise awareness, do something that's going to raise awareness instead of trying to raise awareness and educate people and convert them
and
into
answer all their
like,
objections and all those other things, and mention what the HR team do, because we don't want to leave them out. You know, it's like it's about being precise in your task. The only time I like to say that at any point in the funnel, you need a film that's specifically going to answer that problem. The only exception is like a brand film or something where we use a structure called EFA, which is emotion, fact, and action. And you need to start with that emotional connection at the beginning of like, why do people care? And then once you've done that, you can do some facts. And we say no more than 3 facts. I mean, it's always longer because people say more, but you go emotion, 3 facts, which are very core to the essential thing, and then do something. That is how you make a strong brand film. The more facts you put in the middle, the less people get to the end. That's the bottom line. So it's less is definitely more.
Is there an example of that, like for us to be able to link to and show later?
Full of them. Yeah. I can give you an example too of something great for Airbus that we made. And the emotion, it's Airbus defense and space. So it's very corporate, but it really shows that kind of emotional opening, then some facts and then some action. But you'll notice when you watch it that the middle bit's been written by committee and it's too long, and you'll just drift off and you go, oh, if they took out that and that and that, I'd care and I'd get to the end. But we also work with Shelter, which is a homeless charity in the UK. And we do the same with them. We do, if we're filming a case study of a homeless person, I'll start again. They've got 4 key audiences, female urban, sort of middle-aged female urban people, Gen Z, young male millennials, and young sort of female millennials. So what we've actually realized is when we make a film, we'll make a film about that target audience, so it resonates with them, but also make the viewer realize there's some way to connect with them. So we, for example, when we were making a film for the sort of the 40-year-old male target audience, we did a film about a guy who lost his home when he was 38, having had a job all his life, and now he's homeless, and Shelter got him his job back. So that emotional connection at the beginning is definitely there because you get it. But then there was 3 facts about what Shelter did for him. And then the action was, if you want to help more people like this, donate now. So you still, I can send you examples to those as well, because you have to make that connection. Then you have to tell people stuff, and then you have to make them do something.
Mark and I were talking to, I don't remember, it was in a previous podcast, and we were kind of talking about not only video, but how do you make sure that you're creating that emotional connection in your video. And I think sometimes, all too often, advertisers get caught up into what kind of emotion that the video is trying to elicit. And I think at the end of the day, it's trying to have, you don't have to make everybody cry, but you have to try to find a way to create a connection. And I think everyone's going for these big tearjerker kind of emotional connections in their videos. And sometimes it's just a complete miss because you're trying to focus on one emotion that you're trying to elicit, because we feel like that naturally has a higher affinity. What would you say to advertisers that are looking to go down that route of finding that emotional connection? Is there a specific emotion that you should be trying to narrow in on? Is there, what's your guidance on that?
Finding that connection is the big thing, right? So understanding your audience is vital. I mean, I love talking about this stuff because it's emotion that makes us do it. But
yeah,
let's start with what an emotion is, right? Typically happy, sad, scared, all these things. But actually, that isn't necessarily the emotion that's relevant to your brand. And ultimately, hang on, I just realized that my laptop's not plugged in. That would be bad, right? That would be really bad. Hang on. There we go. Right, I'll start again. So the first thing to do is to understand that there's lots of different type of emotions. There's happy, sad, shocked, all these things, but they're not emotions that are going to help you sell your brand. And if you use those, you're going to feel inauthentic, because there's nothing worse than watching an advert for something which is suggesting it's big melancholy music and it's all heart wrenching and it's selling you chewing gum or something. It's inauthentic. But what you can say is that there is always something that people will care about with your brand. And these emotions might be fear of missing out, the great FOMO. They might be laziness. They might be wanting to be the first. We work with surgeons. We work with a market leader who deals with some kind of neurosurgeons. And the big emotion there is telling them they're amazing. They love that. So, that sort of vanity thing. And the example I give is I think I've made more people watch this film than have actually watched it through the company. But there's a company called Thalia who make software. They do electronic invoicing software. I mean, really, how are you going to get an emotional connection with that? Nobody cares. But what they did is they did this it's a funny video, but they basically said, if you don't use electronic invoicing software, you can get RSI because you're clicking and you're putting all these things in manually. If you get RSI, you have to take some time off. If you take some time off, the intern will have to step in. If the intern steps in, they will do the job better than you will. When they do the job better than you will, they become your boss. Don't let the intern become your boss. And it's like, oh, that's genius, because it's like the emotional driver of using this software, buying this software, is because I don't want to lose my job to someone younger. And that's a very valid, that's a very, very valid emotional driver. So yeah, it's always there.
That's amazing.
Well, going back to there's a classic, then that's such a good one. But the classic, nobody got fired for buying IBM or whatever that phrase is. I think there's a lot of emotion in B2B that nobody really even thinks about, because there's so much fear about losing your job or about getting outsourced, or, all those kinds of things, about having to be reprimanded for making the wrong choice. I mean, there's really actually pretty heavy emotional consequences for a lot of B2B purchases.
Definitely. I mean, I think the key thing to remember in B2B is who's finding this video is probably not the person you're selling it to. It's the person below the person you're selling it to who's been found to find a solution. And what they want to do is they want to look good to their boss. So if you give them a package, a nice shiny video that tells them everything that their boss wants to hear, and it's a tight proposition, they can just go and here's the thing, and they look good. So it's always worth thinking about who the end audience is, but also who's the gatekeeper. So that's what we spend a lot of time doing.
Such a good point.
That's great.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
That's great.
It's like I've been thinking about it before, right?
Yeah. Have you written a book?
Write
a book, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's 30 years of, I don't know if it's knowledge, but it's certainly finding out as you go along. That's the thing. But yeah, so we could take this any way you like now. I mean, it's that, you could talk about emotion and why it matters, or, it's such a big area.
I did want to make sure that we touched on why video works, and we could talk about potentially we talked a little bit about the emotion and how you can help create that connection. But what is it actually about video? The moment someone comes across it, what happens to us? Why are we so engaged with the content?
Yeah, why does it work? Okay. So the way I've reduced it is there's 4 key areas, right? The first one is this idea of most of the video we're watching now is on a mobile device, and we are quite literally addicted to these things because they are just pumping dopamine to us. So if you look at why dopamine was released, it's released as a sort of an evolutionary tool. It makes us feel good about being part of a group. It makes us feel good about finding things, sort of the reward of the search. It makes us feel good when we're praised by others. All these things is what our mobile phone does. It helps us find stuff. It helps us complete tasks, and it helps us feel part of a group. So every time you pick this thing up, we're getting a little sort of kick of dopamine. So that's why we just love the phones, but also we can sort of interact with them, and they've got this tactile element. And there's an amazing piece of work done that is basically, if you're holding a phone in your hand, it somehow feels sort of closer to you, and you will actually pay more for a product you see on your phone than on a screen on the other side of the thing. And this is simply because your body thinks I'm holding it, so it's kind of closer to your sense of self. And I will not go into this whole theory now, but that basically, yes, just the mere fact that we're holding it does mean that we'll pay things for things more highly. So, touch and hold is a big one, because we get a dopamine kick from the phone. The second reason it's so important is it moves, right? And I know we were talking about video as like, well, what is it? It's just moving image. Now, in your eyes, around the outside of your eyes, you have this thing called the ganglion cells, and these are designed to stop us getting eaten by snakes or crocodiles or Canada bears. I suppose I don't know what you get eaten by, because there's so many bears running around. Yeah. So these ganglion cells, if you look at a scene and nothing's happening, they don't fire. But as soon as there's any kind of movement, tiny movement, it will go bang. What's that? I'm going to get eaten by a bear. And your phone is basically always triggering these because you've got movement. And this is why, if you get your phone and it's face down on the other side of the room and that tiny little notification light goes off, which you can't even tell is there, your ganglion cells will see it and you're drawn to it. And also when we're looking at the phone, because everything's moving on it all the time, it just sucks us in. So we can't help it, really. The third key reason that video works so well is probably because you're watching a video that's directly targeted at you, right? That's the other thing. We can target by obviously demographics, but also by interest groups, by, we can target by where you are, what time of day it is, and what mindset you're in if we really wanted to, but it would freak people out. So the fact you're watching a video it's not like watching a TV show and there's just a McDonald's ad and you go, I don't eat McDonald's, because if in digital, that wouldn't be a McDonald's ad, it would be a Chipotle ad or something, that you actually like. So that's the big one. And then the main reason that I think it's so effective is because we can tell stories so well. And the brands that are doing really well are basically storytellers. When we hear a story, we have evolved during evolution to communicate through stories. So beginning, a middle, and end, right? This is how we tell stories. And videos just help us tell stories really well. And when we tell stories, we get all these emotions like serotonin and endorphins and oxytocin. This is what happens when we hear a story, and they change our behavior. So by using stories on phones, we can actually use chemicals to change brain chemistry. And if you're smart about it, we know which buttons to push, what to make you feel. The chemicals kick around. You're going to change your behavior, which is kind of twisted and dark. But if you're doing it for good things, I think it's okay. If we're getting money out of you for charity or UN organizations or anything like that, I don't have an issue with that. It's politics is where it maybe gets a little bit more murky, but we can drive emotional responses through storytelling. Definitely. That was a rant. Sorry about that.
So, with all those things that you can't, that video can do, how do you prioritize? Because I would say, yeah, John, let's do it. I want all of that. Yeah. All the stuff we talked about, sign me up. And also, how much does it cost, and what's the right length of video?
Yeah, exactly. Could I do it for no money? Budget obviously has a big implication to it, but the number one thing I think is a frank look. You're never going to, you don't just pick out a video and it solves all your problems. But the number one thing is, what is my key challenge for the next 12 months? As a marketer, what have I been told to do? Am I looking to reach new communities, or am I looking to talk more to the communities that I'm already talking to? And once you understand what your objectives are, and then you understand what your audiences are, it's a 3-part process, right? What have I been told to do? Who are my audiences? What do they care about? And then it's quite natural to make. It's quite obvious what you got to do. Just as an example, we're working with an automotive company, and they want to push the electric vehicle message to new people. Okay, well, if we just make electric vehicle films for electric vehicle owners or car buffs, we're not going to grow the market. So how do we make content that is beyond that? So we start doing co-productions with cooking and whatever those things are. But that's how you start. Is start small and you test stuff, and you just get better at it. Really, it's difficult to know, because every single brand, if you're a single marketer, in a small brand, I would tell you completely one thing. But if you run a massive marketing department of a global company, I'd tell you another, because it's such a big thing. But you've got to start with who you're talking to and what do they care about. Oh, and what your problems are. That's it, really.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose that didn't really help you, because it's just like, it depends. But
Well, yeah. But I think that is like, it's a good answer, because the structure, in my mind, the structure of what you're suggesting, and you said it a couple times, and it does make sense. Like, understand your problem, understand your audience, and then understand what they care about. And I think that in itself really is essentially the brief, right? And if you can't write a good brief, then maybe that's the priority, right? Where before just saying video is the answer, it's probably like there's no piece of content that is the answer or the silver bullet to everything. It probably is just starting at the clarity that you described around those three things.
Definitely, because then
from there, then everything will get better when you go to produce an asset like a video or a series of videos, or helping you pick between Hero Hub and Hygiene, because those are different tools for different objectives.
Exactly. You go, I wanted these people, I've got this problem. Great. You need a hero film, and to do a hero film for this much money or this much money is going to look like this. You've got this other problem. You just need to make shed loads of like help stuff and just answer questions really cheap. So yeah, the plan, and then you can do it internally or externally. If you go to a production company with that brief, you're going to end up with something that works. Whereas I'm afraid to say that if you go to a production company as opposed to a video marketing agency and you go, I want a film, they're going to sell you the kind of film they like making, or that they can make with their internal resources, because you just said, I need a film. But you go to them with a specific business plan, and you're pushing it down the right route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if you film it yourself, at least you got a plan.
Yeah.
As you guys were kind of talking about just essentially, how you're setting it up, where is it that you start? So you loosely define, you're setting that goal, defining the audience, where are they in potentially that consumer decision journey. It already felt daunting, a part of me. Like, and I'm trying to think again for companies and advertisers. It's like going through that process. If I think about the way companies structure, if you will, their marketing departments, their digital marketing teams and whatnot, because video is one of those things, like, where does it actually live? And we can touch on it now, or we can touch on it later. I don't know of any advertiser that has a lot of these capabilities in-house, in the sense that can actually approach these problem statements in that very, methodical way. And usually you have them outsourced. The moment you outsource, though, that's when the cost usually goes up incredibly. So what would your suggestion is in that context? Like, is video expensive because of the amount of demand on resources, or is it expensive because it's hard to define exactly what anyone may need? I don't know if that makes sense. For some reason, it makes sense in my head, but
yeah, video can be expensive because of production costs. I mean, ultimately, the reason it can cost quite a lot of money is you need some people to go somewhere with some expensive kit, which is, 6 guys and food and travel. It's just expensive. And then they have to get back. And then you've got a team of, men and women who are spending 2 weeks cutting it and stuff. So it's a big capital outlay because there's a lot of work involved. It's not like running an email campaign, which is like one person sorts out the database and you run it. But so it can be quite expensive from that point of view. But I don't think that the planning should necessarily be that onerous. I mean, for example, I run a half-day workshop and we just smash it, because it's like, even if it hasn't been done at the brand level, right? Let's just say you don't have all the formal personas, you don't have all of that. As a marketer, you still basically know who you're talking to. And then what's the case of doing is maybe testing it. Well, this film, we're going to just talk about this particular benefit, and the next film we'll talk about those, and we'll just see how they do. So it's a sliding scale. But I think the most important thing is just to, even if you don't know, take a punt. I mean, because the sooner you get out there and test it, the better. I think the only thing you can do wrong is just do one thing for everyone. loads of messages, because then we'll get it right. Better just to randomly pick one out of the hat and see if it works, because at least you'll have some data. Whereas if you make everything in one film and it works, you've no idea why.
There's two things I wanted to ask you about. One is the creative commitment, and then the other one is around testing. So, I mean, we could maybe split this up, but the two questions would be like, how do you test? And if the capital investment in producing a film is so large upfront, it kind of sounds a bit scary in a way. Like, how do you help people get some information about what's going to work better? And then the second question is thinking about maximizing the benefit of, whichever direction you end up going. How do you, like, there's I think it was Wark came up with this idea of creative commitment, and they have a whole thing around it. But I feel like it's a blessing and a curse, and I kind of want to lean more towards it being a blessing, because once you have a choice that you've made in which direction you're going to go all in, I think is kind of what the Wark stuff is saying. And I feel like too often we don't have the right information, kind of what V's speaking about, to build a great brief, which then gives you kind of a subpar like direction for a producer like yourself, which then leads to like not really making commitment, and you have all these committees that provide input, and you kind of wash out this idea that could have been originally really strong, but then ends up becoming kind of flat.
Death by committee. I mean, it's like it's what kills it. Okay, so your first question was A/B testing and how do we test? And again, it comes on a massive sliding scale. If you've got multi-million-pound budgets, you will develop ideas, you'll audience test those, in audience research, then you'll make an animatic and you'll test this. But it's like, that's crazy money. At the other end, testing doesn't have to mean remaking the whole film. So we have what we call the 4 R's, which is we review stuff, right? If it's working, we just renew it. We just put it out again. If it's kind of working, we refresh it. And if it isn't working until we reiterate it, which is a nice way of saying we bid it and do something else. But, testing can be as little as you've got a talking head with a CEO. We're going to use his first opening statement as this, which is about this particular topic. But then we're also going to put out one where he opens with a different thing. And we're just going to see which one of those resonates. Or it might be as simple as, we've got this film, we're just going to test which thumbnail works and which copy works. So, it's a massive sliding scale. I think by the time you're all in, you do, like you said, you're all in on an idea, right? You don't want to then be like, we're going to make a bit of another idea. And it's like, that's your idea. You should believe in it, but you should be testing what the title is, what the thumbnails are, and, definitely testing the call to action, because that's the big one. So I'll go back to an earlier example we had. So we've made some films for some neurosurgeons, and it was a LinkedIn ad, and the advert was exactly the same, but we ran 2 ads, and one of them was, this is the future of neurosurgery, which is like this, the thing's amazing and it's great. And the other one we ran, you are the future of neurosurgery, which is talking directly to the surgeons and saying how amazing they are. And it outperformed the other one 3-1, because it's like people, I'm the future of neurosurgery, I'll watch that. As the other one sounds a bit like this is a product film, whereas the other one's, it's about you. And same film, right? So you can make exponential changes just by small testing at any point. You don't have to remake the whole thing.
That's a great example.
But it's interesting, that one is because it goes back to emotional drivers. Yeah, okay, surgeons. Okay, what do they care about? They care about saving lives. Sure. They also like being better than other people. And they also like, their statistics being good, and they like getting it done quickly and going home. I'm lumping all surgeons together, but as professional people, we're not all just about servicing the end customer. We've got our own lives, and so just test what it is that resonates.
And then on the commitment side, is that, how important is that like there's dialogue and I would say pushback maybe is another way to say it on and protecting an idea. Like we're committing to this idea, and this is the path we're going to, like, how much of that plays out in the production
all the time,
of a
all the
video?
time. So if you work for a marketing team and you found a video agency or a video guy, or you just got an entire idea, before that goes into production, you need to get, I would say, as high up the chain of command as you can to get buy-in of the idea, right? Because that's how you protect it down the line. So what can often happen is the marketing team will make it, they've bought into the idea, it's sweet, it's a really strong idea, then it goes up the chain to someone who doesn't have any context, and then it comes back watered down. Let's change the VO line, let's change that thing, and then suddenly it comes back as 80% of what it was, because the people up the chain are not bought in. So I think you do need to go in large. If you've got a creative idea, a lot of films don't have a central creative idea, and you might water it down with some specific messages, but if you've got an emotional connection, or you're going after, just go after it. And also, like, I tend to show other films that have been watered down and why they're ineffective. So normally what will happen is it will go up the chain, it will have stuff added, and then it will come down again.
So let's talk about, and we just had a technical glitch there. So John, let's just pick up from where we left off, which was around the concept of how important is it to protect the idea, and what can you do to have that commitment to an idea?
Okay, cool. Well, you typically come up with ideas where you sit in a room and you have these great ideas and you work really, really hard to develop a good strategy and a good plan, and you figure out the audience and you figure out what people want to say. And then you make it, and it goes up the chain, and someone who's got no idea about what this is, or has really just coming in cold, or doesn't share the same vision as you, watches it and goes, well, that's not what I want. And they immediately add stuff, take stuff out, change stuff. It comes down the chain back to you, and it's not as good. So it's super important, I think, that once you've got an idea that you believe in, you take all the other stakeholders in your company on that journey with you, as high up the chain as you can go, until you find someone that is able to protect that idea. And, I think the thing is, in corporate world, maybe it's better to water it down so there's nothing wrong. Well, actually, it's like nothing wrong is not the same as being good. Mm-hmm. And having this lowest common denominator where all of the departments in the building are happy is not the way to do it. So you need to protect that idea. Mm-hmm. And I think probably one of the benefits that I have as an external consultant is, for some reason, brands tend to listen to people they're paying a lot of money to on a day rate more than they do their own team, right? So I can be brought in by a team to protect their idea, and I can come in and go, I'm the expert, and here's a load of stats, and they will listen to me. So I'm saying is, get help wherever you can to protect that idea, because you've got to stick with it. Otherwise it will suffer death of 1,000 cuts, and it will be bland, and it just won't work.
So just listening to all that, channels, and I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but channels becomes fundamentally important on how you approach video. So there's obviously, maybe it's a two-part question, but do you build for the channel or do you build for the idea?
It's very good. I would say you need to build for the audience. So what we're asking first is, where, we know who the audience is, or we don't, maybe we don't, but how do we reach them? So obviously it's really basic stuff, right? If you're trying to reach millennials, older millennials, you're going to be looking at Facebook, some Instagram. If you're looking at Gen Z, you want to be looking at TikTok, those kind of things. But equally, if you're looking at a B2B audience, how do we use LinkedIn? But also, how do we use Instagram? How do we use, to be honest, if you want to get to everybody, then YouTube. So it's kind of like each of the channels will help you reach a different audience, better than others. But also, depending on what kind of thing you're doing, if you're doing how-to videos, how do I use it? Then your natural home is going to be on YouTube, because that's where people watch how-to videos. But if you are looking to do buy our face product, 10-second video, then obviously Facebook ads is a really good way to do that. So I think understanding each channel is really important. I think the two things to know about, the main thing to know about channels is how they differ. And there's two types of channels. There's what we call fixed channels, which are typically watched in landscape, and they are where you sit with some headphones and you watch stuff. And you might get away with quite a long film on there, and it's quite deep. And YouTube is the classic example. So is Vimeo, so is Netflix, so is standard TV. The thing about when you go on a fixed channel is if you put content on there, it will have a long tail. It will still be being watched 6 months later. It's really good for evergreen content. But then the other platforms are fluid platforms. And these are where your thumb's just going mental, just like TikTok and flicking through, bum, 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 and like super sharp. People aren't going to be looking for stuff. It just pops up in their feed. But the thing is, they flick their thumb and you are gone. So your tail is minutes. So if you're looking to launch a campaign, and you want it to be a long tail thing which is going to sit around, then you know, don't look at a fluid platform. Think about what you can do on the fixed ones. You know, thinking about how people watch on those channels will really help you know what to do. It's lots. You know, there's lots to think about, but it all boils down to knowing what kind of films do we need to solve the problems. Oh, okay, it's those kind of things. Well, how would we get people to watch those? But each of the channels are better at paid activity. So, I mean, I'm really impressed with Twitter video ads, and how the click-through rate is quite cheap. The cost per acquisition is quite cheap. LinkedIn is so expensive. It's very good for very, very targeted niches. But equally, if you just want to hit an industry generally, then go on Instagram and get them while they're at home. It's a much cheaper way of reaching people.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of confidence in different channels, I think, that comes inherently with the channel. So, and you kind of mentioned it in terms of demographics, like TikTok, you feel confident that you can reach younger people. Instagram, you feel confident you can reach people while they're casually browsing. LinkedIn, you mentioned, you can feel confident that you can reach B2B, but in reality, like, people are kind of everywhere. And so it's hard to be distinct audiences, you know, on each platform. It's probably more likely that they are everywhere, but the confidence of how you can target people, I think, is interesting.
Well, it boils down to the cost of it. You know, you probably can get the same people on LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok, but what mood are they in when you reach them, and how much does it cost you? So it's testing cost per acquisition. I mean, that's literally, for me, the key metric for me is click-through rate. It's like, because as a video maker, as a content maker, I'm looking to drive them somewhere. Now, when they get there, if your on-site experience is no good, or your landing page doesn't work, or your conversion rate, I mean, that's kind of, I have to say, the brand's problem. You know, my job is to get people on the site engaged, willing to find out more. So how do I get the cheapest click-through rate for the relevant audience? Now, some people would say, well, if you're sending us loads of bad traffic, then, you know, yes, I do agree, but I'm not just sending randoms to your website. But, you know, how can I get the right people from the target audience clicking through? And sometimes that will be cheaper on Facebook, sometimes Insta, sometimes YouTube pre-rolls, you know, sometimes digital display ads. Who knows? It's about testing.
I feel like you opened a can of worms with the click-through rate, and I wanted to jump into that one.
Yeah, yeah, go on then. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't, like, V and I have talked about this with each other a lot, but, like, I don't think a click-through rate is always the answer, because especially with films, if you can tell people, some of it is depending on the objective. Like, I may want to just reach as many people as possible, and so in that case, I'll optimize the media for reach, and I really don't care about click-through rate. In other circumstances,
it's the problem simplifying things. You know, simplifying to a sentence is always going to be wrong. But yeah, I agree.
But but I get your point though. Like, I mean, there are times when click-through rate does matter a lot. That's how you're optimizing the buy.
But going back to what we were talking about earlier, digital funnels, right? What's the problem you're trying to solve? If you've got an awareness problem, stick it on YouTube, 0 click-through, really cheap eyeballs, brilliant. But if your problem is acquisition, then it's mid-funnel stuff. You know, it boils down to what we said earlier, which is, what's the business problem I'm trying to solve, and finding the right. Yes, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, if I just got everyone to click through, I had a high click-through rate, but not many people saw it, then that's not very useful either.
Well, it's an easy way to protect. So as a creator, or, you know, a video creator that you are, being able to say, like, hey, look at how many people clicked, you can protect your work, right? And anyone that puts out videos like, hey, no, we drove X amount of traffic. When you're starting to stitch that holistically, though, I think that's where it becomes, well, why did that click happen? Did another channel help with the conversion? So maybe, for example, people came to the page, didn't convert right away, but it was that 20% hook that came in after in an email that actually drove that. But the awareness, the affinity actually came from the video originally. So it's a whole other conversation. We don't need to get into that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the acquisition of whose lead it is a fantastic conversation. And my favorite thing is television commercials. You know, they would have you believe that any activity landing on your website within 6 weeks of that TV commercial airing is theirs. It's just like, I don't think it is, mate.
Yeah.
As you say, another day.
John, this has been really great. I appreciate your time, and there's so much good stuff in the book, and like we kind of scratched the surface on a big swath of it, but like there's so much depth to get into with this.
As you can tell, I love talking about it. It's nice to talk to you guys and just chew over, chew the cud on it and see where the chat goes. It's really good conversation. It's been really enjoyable.
Yeah, thanks for spending the time with us. How do people find out more about you and the book and the work you're doing?
Okay. So the book is called Video Marketing. My agency is called Hurricane Media. So if you Google, it's hurricanemedia.co.uk is our website, but if you just Google Jon Mowat Video Marketing, you'll find me. But more importantly, anyone who's listening to the Sleeping Barber website podcast has got a special discount code, which is cool. So Sleeping Barber 20. If you go onto Kogan Page's website, or you just Google Jon Mowat's Kogan Page, it will take you through to my book. I'm sure there'll be links with this, but Sleeping Barber 20, and you'll get some money off.
Nice. Thanks for that. That's great.
That's all right. Yeah, we appreciate that, man. That's awesome.
No worries.
Okay. Well, thanks, John. This has been super fun. And again, thanks for sharing all your insights on this. And it is such an interesting and fascinating topic because it is, like you said before, I think complex, but it's not complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated.
It's not difficult. It's just lots going on, right?
That's a great way.
Yeah. So this has been super enlightening.
Thank you. And thank you for getting up very early in the morning to accommodate me being in the UK. So I do appreciate that.
No, man. That's our pleasure.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for having me. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Take care.
Sounds good. Thanks, John.
And now the post-pod discussion with V and Marc. V, post-pod.
Here we go. Video marketing.
Yeah.
What a fascinating conversation with John there. I think we covered quite a bit of ground, but unfortunately, we didn't actually talk about the book enough, which is such an amazing resource. But I think we did spend time and really discuss, some of those nuances that I think are pretty important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just to talk about the book for a second.
Yeah.
And by the way, there is that the code that he offered for our listeners, which is great. Yeah. And so thanks, John, for that. The part that I thought the book was really useful for was like a how-to guide. So if you weren't hiring an agency that does this all the time, like there's so many great like step-by-step things in there and formulas, or not formulas, but templates and frameworks that help you like actually go into production of a video, which I thought is super practical and helpful.
I can't think of another resource that really covers everything from start to finish when it comes to strategizing, producing, editing video, and the equipment that you need all in one book. Like it has the marketing lens, which is extremely powerful in of itself, but then really getting into those real nuances of, what equipment do you actually need? And you'd be surprised. Like it kind of has it broken down by the different levels. So, just getting started versus, more, more developed teams that have maybe a lot more kit to do that work. So I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. It's a funny thing too, where I've seen, and you and I both have been in different scenarios where I'm sure you've seen this too, but like you can say to any team, like, let's go get photos, right? Or we need a blog, or we need some kind of like graphic. Yeah. And that's no problem. All of a sudden you say, and we need a video, and it's like, everyone just stops. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean a video? Like, and then it becomes this huge, I don't know why. I think he said it was like complex, not complicated. Maybe it is. I think that's how he said it. But it's such a like an arresting kind of moment when you ask a team to produce a video. It seems to like really freeze people up.
And I can appreciate why, because if you think about it, like many things in marketing, they're so subjective. When you're producing a video for your organization and you have to run it up the ladder, so to speak, you don't know how it's going to land, right? Yeah. And I think you did a great great job there asking him just around questions around like the brief, the, really understanding. I think you mentioned it as understand your problem, understand your audience, and then understand what they care about. Like those three things. And if you can form them the right way and have enough information there, that's, there's insights, there's data behind it, that essentially informs the brief. So that should take some of that out of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not easy. We can't sit here and pretend like, oh my goodness, read this book and you're gonna, pump out videos like nothing else. It is still a very difficult thing to do and to do right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we talked to a few things that kind of stick out for me too, where we were talking about building for the channels, whether you should build for the channel or not. And I think his response was, you start with the audience. Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And so with that in mind, and the sort of, I think he said planning, production, and activation is how you think about producing video. So the planning part really starts with that audience and figuring out like, what is it you're going to do? And he talked about what stages of the funnel you're going to go after. Yep. But really, I think in kind of leaning into that brief idea that you're talking about, I think that's a huge part of video. Yeah. Really, any kind of content moment is really thinking through the different scenarios that you're going to use the assets in, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, I need something," and as a knee-jerk reaction, turn it around and get it done. Yeah. Probably for everybody, planning some of these content moments is. Spending more time planning them is probably a really good idea.
I agree. And even if you look at like the short form video platforms, so you think of like the TikToks, even Reels and whatnot, it may seem like because they're so small or snackable or literally 7 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever the number is, that even that requires a level of planning to do right. Because when you're trying to build your brand around it, it's not just someone sitting in front of a camera on their own and just doing like funny little skits. When you're strategically trying to determine what's your brand voice on those platforms, there's a level of rigor and discipline needed to do it right. Like, and I don't know, and excuse my ignorance here, but I don't know very many brands that are actually doing TikTok right. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been looking at this recently with a couple of people I work with, and it's tough. I mean, I think the same thing is true. Like you and I worked together when Instagram launched its ad platform, and that was a thing, right? And we're all trying to adapt to that because historically it was print, TV, radio, billboard. Yep. And then now you got, well, at that time it was Instagram came out, Facebook came out, and you could do video on those things, and YouTube is there, right? And so then you're like, okay, well, what does that mean for the brand? You used to just make 30s, and now you got this other option of like something else. Yeah. And so I think it's an interesting thing because there's this sort of sense of like a moth to a flame kind of thing where you're like, totally. Oh, there's a new channel. I got to go do that. And yeah, get burned up. But I don't know that you have to do, like, it's probably, nobody has to do everything. No. And, I don't think it's necessary for every brand just because there's a new channel to get into it. Again, I think John's comment was really good. Yeah. Think about your audience. Think about where they are. And if they're there, then sure, like, go and experiment. But I also don't think there's this sense of perfection that's expected from brands anymore. Where historically, because you spent so much putting money into a TV spot, the inventory costs a ton to begin with, and then the production costs a ton. You can do stuff more flexibly without the sort of, doesn't necessarily have to be unprofessional, but it doesn't have to be like pro quality to present your brand on some of these channels, especially when it's so disposable now. Like, it's here and it's gone, and you never see it again.
I think that's the magic word. It has become so disposable. The amount of content each of us individually as consumers, we ingest from a day-to-day perspective, either through the form of ads, either through the form of just that, engaging content, if you will. It is so difficult to break through in that space. I think, if we go back to the three things, understanding your problem, understanding your audience, and understanding again what they care about, you'll be able to determine if the platforms are the right ones for you. So we keep picking on TikTok. I think you're 100% right in the sense that TikTok may not be the platform for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're already creating, awareness, reach through other mediums, you're already building those mind structures. I think you have to be very, very prepared to venture into a space like TikTok or Reels, if you will, that can, further enhance, any campaign that you're looking to do. But
yeah,
I've got to be careful how I say this. Don't focus on TikTok and build out from that. I think there's other channels that you can really kind of focus your video content on, and then look how maybe something like TikTok or those short form content videos play into the overall strategy. I'm sure others have done it in reverse and they've been successful. I guess I'm being ignorant here where I haven't seen that yet.
Well, I think it depends also on what your play is. Like if it's an organic play, my favorite story about this is my Pinterest story. So, way back when we're like, okay, we're doing Facebook, we're doing Instagram, we're doing YouTube. Okay, we're doing Twitter. We got to get on to Pinterest because we're trying to reach a female audience. That's where they shop and so on and so forth. Cool. Got approval, got resources. We did a photo shoot for the newest campaign that we were launching at the time.
Yeah.
We got all these assets that we could publish on Pinterest. And then that was it. We never did another content shoot that we could pull specifically assets out of it for Pinterest because we went on to something else that wasn't female oriented, like hockey or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Not that hockey's not female oriented, but it was just the opportunity to create all these shoppable like pins wasn't quite the same focus. And so, and my point of saying that was an organic play. And so if you're producing assets from an organic perspective, like TikTok videos, and part of that is, that sort of mantra of like, and now back to regularly scheduled programming.
Right.
If you're doing an organic play, I feel like it's kind of one of those things where you need to have regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah.
Like every Thursday at 8 p.m., we used to watch Friends because that was like every Thursday at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And you kind of organize around that. And now with this on-demand sort of platform, like you almost always have to have content there. So the resources that you put into that are kind of ongoing and always demanding more and more and more.
Yeah.
And so my Pinterest story is just a small like reflection of that that if you don't commit to it from an organic perspective, like you might as well not bother.
Such a great point, because think about the content demands already on teams. And I know you and I were very fortunate at one point where we overlapped in our careers, and we had a pretty robust studio team that, we did the majority of all, if not everything, we did kind of in-house. Right. And I'm trying to think how big that team was, but it wasn't a small team.
Yeah.
But how many companies or organizations have the luxury of internalizing that whole process? Not many.
No.
And you want to outsource it? Not saying you can't, but that's also very, very expensive as well. So when you think about the content demands across all the channels that you may be activating as a brand or as a service, man, you got to be dialed in terms of making sure you know up front what you need from what channel, understand. And I think Jon did a great job articulating, like throughout the day, we spend our time in our phones being vertically, right? So any content that you're consuming it vertically. But it's later in the day where you're sitting on your couch, maybe you're sitting at the kitchen table, maybe you're in bed, where you flip it horizontal. So obviously your mind is ready to process content a lot differently.
Yeah.
So it's almost thinking about it also during the time of day as well. Like that's yet another parameter that you have to consider when you're creating this content.
Well, I think he mentioned that he used to deliver a 16:9 video on a CD, a single one on a CD. Now he's got like 20 or 30 assets that he's delivering all digital files on. To your point, like, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
And you throw into the equation, like now you can cast onto a television set. Maybe you're streaming video just to hear the audio, depending on the podcasts do that sometimes. Like it's not just a single purpose tool anymore with just one particular specific placement. Like it's like have content will travel.
Yeah. Well, we're having this struggle as a family right now. So we have a 5-month-old daughter, and any video that we have it vertically. Anytime people come over and want to share videos, we want to cast it to a screen. It's not widescreen because we're not doing it horizontally, right? The content sucks. It doesn't work. You have this big ass screen, and then you're literally using 1/4 of it down the middle because you've taken the video vertically.
Yeah,
we gotta think flip that phone on the side, man.
Oh, that's so funny.
Got to play the long game.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, that is another part I wanted to talk about, because we talked about he gets these questions. How long should it be?
Yeah.
Spin the long game. What's your take on some of those types of questions?
That is, our favorite answer. I wish every time we would say this. I think that I wish we need a noisemaker,
a buzzer,
or something. A buzzer. Yeah. It depends. We need a buzzer around. It depends.
Like an air horn? Something.
Got to catch each other every time we say it depends. Like, but it does depend. Right? And I think it goes back down to those 3 fundamental things of understanding the audience and whatnot, and saying, do I need hero content? If I need hero content to generate awareness because my brand is struggling, I think you can get away with length there. Right? Because you're trying to be emotive. You want to try to show a level of affinity, create connection, and all that. I think if you're, I don't know, I'm going to say 20% off or 30% off message, that doesn't have to be very long. That can be literally
pretty succinct.
Pretty succinct, like 50% off on now, go. Right? That's 5 seconds. You can have a lot of movement. And I loved where he talked about why we're so intrigued by video. We can get that in a second. But when I think about the length of video, it depends. But I think there is frameworks that you can really apply when you're looking at it. It's not one size fits all. It's understanding what is the purpose of the content that you're putting out, finding the right channels that can bring that to life for you, and then focus on, I don't want to say the best practices, because sometimes we have a lot of those publishers and a lot of those companies suggest something that may not be a best practice, or what it's a perceived best practice.
Yeah.
But almost trust your gut in those, because remember, we all consume this media as well.
Yeah.
We know what works.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. My take on that one, well, a couple of years ago or a year ago, maybe, I was asked to do a presentation, and so I did it on attention. So there's that statement about, the average human has an attention span of a goldfish, or less than a goldfish now. It's 7 seconds or something. Goldfish can focus for 8. I don't know how they figured out how goldfish can focus for 8 seconds, but for me, it's just that statement bugs me to no end.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen Top Gun yet, but the new movie, I think it's probably 2.5 hours.
Jesus.
And from everyone that I've talked to, like Avatar, I remember that was a long one. That was 3 hours. Like all the Lord of the Rings, they're 3 hours.
Yeah.
And like, I remember watching, what was it called? Forrest Gump when that came out. And that one, it was the weirdest experience that I've had. I remember having where it was, I sat down and then I think it's a 2.5 hour movie and it felt like 2 minutes went by and then it was done.
Yeah.
So
That's
like
a great movie,
have,
by the way.
Yeah, it was a great movie. So we have the capacity for attention, like for long spans of attention.
Yeah.
And a channel like YouTube allows us to create assets that are much longer than you would ever have thought possible before. Because you could do a 30-minute video if you want. And you also have these other channels like TikTok or Instagram, whatever, where you've got like, you know, Vine way back in the day, where you've got like 5-6 second, or YouTube bumpers, 5-6 second videos. So all of that's true. The other part, like you can play to both of them. I don't think you have to only do short format videos. Like if you wanted to do something longer, you can. The other part is that I think, and I don't think we really covered this, but there are channels where people aren't even seeing it. So you think that you're delivering impressions. You think that you're delivering like a digital GRP. Yeah. And there's things like non-viewable impressions, which is such an oxymoron. So, like,
that's so.
So true. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, there's, I think attention. I know there's some work from Karen Nelsonfield, I think is her name, that to start with, the channel you're putting the content on, if people aren't even paying attention to it, it doesn't matter the video length because they're not even beginning to pay attention to it to begin with. So there's like some of that stuff that I think is fascinating. I don't think it's only about short format video. I don't think it's about long format video. I think it's kind of like, you know, the audience, like we're talking about before, the audience, planning the production then to suit the audience, and then where you think you're going to distribute them, or the assets. And then you can move into production. And so I think, it's kind of it's such an interesting area.
Well, there's some instances, and I remember, TV used to have with it a lot of structure around it, right? So you could build. We were always told, you know, you can do 30-second TV ads. You can do, I think you can do up to 15 and 30. Isn't that? I don't even actually. It's been a while since I've done video for TV.
30s for sure, 60s for sure. Sometimes you could buy like special inventory. Most of the time it was 30s or 60s, but you could buy like a 90, or you could, depending on the channel and the format, you could buy like, sometimes they have the interstitials or like the
right
ad within an ad, that kind of stuff.
But to your point, I remember there's been commercials where have captivated me for the entire minute. Which is like against everything that you read now. You cannot have a 1 minute video. But again, if you're thinking about it, we've talked to so many people about this, you know, building an emotion. How do you make sure that you're creating that connection or helping, again, building those mind structures? I think that the last thing you have to worry about right off the bat is length. I don't think that's where you start. Yeah. Because if you start there, then you're producing for a medium, which may, as a result, actually create a poor experience or actually not do what it is that you're trying to achieve with that video. Let your creatives be creative. If it comes out 30 seconds, 60 seconds, look at it, assess it, use some focus groups, because you may realize very quickly, like, you know what, this is gold, and it's 1 minute long, but it's gold. Let's build a media strategy around that then.
It's fine. Until you mentioned that, I didn't even think about this, but remember when we did work together, there was we used to run these campaigns all the time, and I remember there's a constant battle between the creative team and the media team where we're like, well, how are you guys going to produce anything if you don't know what channels we're putting it on? And they're like, why are you going to limit us to these channels? We haven't even come up with the idea yet. And I used to get really angry and frustrated about that, but I've now like gone to the creative side where I'm like, yeah, like it's way better to start with an idea because it's about the audience, and produce that idea for the audience and then you can, like in the post-production or whatever, you could, and it's not to say you don't consider the channels, but like whether it's sound on, sound off, like that's important. But yeah, like there's so many channels now. You've got lots of options. So I don't think you have to feel restricted.
No,
it's really liberating in some ways.
I think you're right, honestly, because all too often we get caught where we're putting the cart before the horse. And if we're saying like the campaign's power is the creative influence that it can drive, that's the power. It's not, the media, the channel that brought it to life.
Yeah.
If the idea is strong enough, it will transcend channels.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah. Yeah. That was another interesting thing that he had talked about, was protecting the ideas as they kind of go into the organization, then come back out into production land. But I think it was really smart where you're trying to get buy-in from as high level as you can early.
Yeah.
To help protect that idea.
Yeah. And I've seen that work. I've seen that not work. Because then, even if there is alignment, say on the onset of a campaign, when it comes to life, it may, because again, everyone's walking away with their own interpretation of what this is going to look like. When it comes back and it didn't check that box, then it's just like, wah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's tough, man. It's tough to make something that is creative and has multiple interpretations from multiple different people.
Yeah.
What they see in their head versus what the reality is. Yeah. To get everybody excited about that at the end is not always as simple as it sounds. Never as simple as it sounds.
It's never easy.
Yeah.
Well, when you tie it back, if you think about like what the role of a marketer is, it is, to essentially appeal to the largest audience possible for any given moment, from a campaign perspective, right? So you have to solve for that. But along the way, you're also selling this to people in your organization that sometimes are more senior than you. Most of the time, they're more senior than you. And you're always then working on those focus groups of their own, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I sent a video to my friend. He didn't like it. This is not going to work.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You're not the demographic. Doesn't matter.
Or did you send that buddy of yours the brief?
Yeah.
To show what the objective of the video was.
Exactly. It makes it hard. Yeah. It makes our roles and building that, trying to build that rapport internally as well can sometimes be exhausting, because I think we naturally want to think that, we have the creative freedom, we have that liberty, we've been able to, we've earned it because of our careers, that, just trust us, this is going to work. Where it feels like more and more it is that uphill battle, because maybe we're losing those battles in some of those forums where, maybe in the past we won.
Yeah. I know we haven't published Nicole's video yet, but there's some interesting tie-ins now as we're just trying to chat about this, starting to chat about this. And I'm thinking about the conversation we had with Nicole, because some of the ideas around like the strategic objective of any asset is to create, or how'd you say it? The neurons that wire together, fire together, or fire together, wire together.
Fire together, wire together. Yeah.
And the idea of like nudging or like hitting the consumer with a feather, you know what I mean? Like that, I think that was some of the ideas that she had. But like when you think about the strategic objectives that way, and video plays a role in doing that.
Yeah.
I think and often sometimes we expect a lot and we promise a lot as a marketer. Like, we can turn around the company, we can, generate sales today. And unless you've got your 50% off message to incentivize people to do something now. I mean, really, it's not that simple. And I just saw an article today from Roger Martin saying, like, there's a whole bunch of things that people and companies can do. One of them is like you cannot make a customer do what you want them to do. Like, so put it in perspective, like there's independent variables, the things you can control, and there's a dependent variable, which is the customer. And then like you can't make them you can't make them do things that just because you want them to do things.
Yeah.
And so, a long-winded story around back to video, like I think if we have an objective and we have reasons why we want to do things, we go into production, we make these assets that are intended to influence, remind, build those memory structures. Like in a way, getting people to know your brand, know what you do and how they can find you, like that's a huge victory because most people 100%. Don't think twice about a company, right?
No. It was with Jorge and Graham. Where we talked about brands serve as a shortcut for our brains.
Right.
Like, let that settle for a second. Like, that's all a brand is when you think about it. And we talk about emotion and, oh my goodness, I feel so empowered and all these things. The reality is, if it's a product specifically, what it does for you is anytime you're interested in something that maybe that company or, that the brand, has, it's just a shortcut for your brain. Like, let's just go pick it up. We've had great experiences multiple times. It's a no-brainer. We're going to go buy it there. Done. That's all it's doing.
Just reminding people.
That's it.
And like, that sounds insufficient in some ways, but it's really like a huge accomplishment to get that done.
Anytime you can occupy space in a consumer's mind, you've won.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a couple of friends yesterday. I'm like, oh, when's so-and-so's birthday?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit. Is it the 8th or the 12th? I can't remember. Like, that's a good friend of mine. I can't remember his birthday. I'm like, how much time am I going to spend thinking about like this brand and like everything about them? Like it's just not going to happen.
What is that line that you have? Something around like, we see like if we acted on every ad that we saw, we'd be broke or something like that.
Oh yeah.
So if advertising actually worked the way we think it always works, like none of us would have money. Because if you think about the amount of ads we actually see in the day, we may not create that, what's it called? Now I'm drawing a blank, but we may not in that moment really understand that, what it is and what it's actually trying to do because we're not in the space to receive that ad, so to speak. So
like in market or out of market kind of thing.
That's a way better way of saying it, Mark. So thank you. But you know what I mean? It's just, we'd be broke. We got no money.
Totally. Yeah, I'd be buying all kinds of stuff. Like I saw an ad for like a B2B tech software. I'm like, okay, so sure. So what? Am I going to buy that? Because I just saw it? No.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, it's super interesting conversation. I'm really glad we got a chance to chat with Jon. And like so engaging, so fun.
Totally.
Thanks, Jon.
Yeah. I hope everything's okay because he did share that story about the tea towel rack, and I hope he's not in trouble or anything with any of the British forces or anything. That was so amazing.
That was really funny. Yeah. Okay, V.
All right, man.
It's a good chat. Thanks for the pod again, and we'll look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, buddy. This was another great conversation. And Jon, if you're listening, thanks, man. Really appreciate that. Don't forget, everyone, you get 20% off. Use a promo code. We'll add it to the show links below. And look to pick this up. It is a great read.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.